This seemed like another easy game. Of course, that was about to change.
The president's working group to reduce gun violence is looking at three issues: access to guns, mental health concerns, and depictions of violence in the media. But in each area, the solutions are complicated and the data sometimes surprising. Max Fisher has been looking at the relationship between video games and gun deaths and joins us now with some charts. Max, explain what you've put on this graph and what it tells us.
So everybody knows that the U.S. has a very unusually high rate for shooting deaths and for school shootings. And everybody talks about, isn't there some role for that in video games in our culture? And I thought, okay, well, there are other countries that have video games, so we can actually do a comparison. So what I charted out here are, on the bottom is video game spending per capita, and these are the 10 countries with the largest video game markets in the world. And then vertically here you have the gun-related murder rate. So you can see there's a pretty consistent trend of really low gun-related murder rates in all the big video game countries in the world, and then the US stands way out here.
And so if we go to the second chart, we see this is what we might expect if there was a correlation. Is that right?
Right. The way that these scatter plots work is if consuming more video games made you more likely to do something violent, then you would see Canada would be right here instead of way down here, and then South Korea and the Netherlands would be way up here. But that's not the story that the data is telling you at all.
Chart 3.
Right, so this is the actual trend line. And the thing is if you take out the United States, it's actually a straight line, which suggests, just statistically speaking, no correlation between video game consumption and shooting deaths.
Okay, now let's do the yeah, but portion of the program. Sure. Yeah, but do we know that these countries are buying the same types of games?
You know how people all over the world generally watch the same big budget movies? That's even more true with video games. So generally speaking, people in the Netherlands and Canada and the US and Japan are all playing pretty much the same video games. The Japanese and Korean market is a little bit different, but those games are actually much more violent, or can be much more violent than the games we're playing in the West.
And then the other yeah, but I'd give is contributing factors. Almost certainly video games on their own aren't making people go and shoot each other up. But when you add on to that access to guns, when you add on to that poverty and income inequality, when you add on to that a large population, couldn't it be a contributing factor when you have those other preconditions that the U.S. has?
That's right. There's actually a lot of research that shows that the effect of playing violent video games psychologically can have on people, and it can be desensitizing towards violence. It can actually increase feelings of aggression. The access to guns, I think, is a really important one. See the U.S. standing out there on shooting deaths. On income inequality, the U.S. actually does not stand out so much from these. China is much more unequal. London has very high income inequality, some really poor neighborhoods, in some big German cities, some big racial and economic divides.
Yeah, and I guess what I think maybe this comes down to, and kind of the setup was that this is so complicated. You can say, okay, China has income inequality. They do, but they don't have access to guns. You can say some of these other places have violent video games, but they don't have the income inequality. There's this perfect soup in the U.S., and perhaps, as the president's working group is suggesting, it's the nexus of all these different factors that's creating this problem.
Right. Well, it is definitely true that the one variable where the U.S. stands out in the most extreme and the clearest way is access to guns.
All right. Max, thanks for the charts.
Thank you.